So, what are you've already kind of talked about some of your main goals. Is there anything that you want to add to that? Is
All
there any
right. Yes.
specifics?
Okay. So only because this is a unique thing because I think I'm invited on because of the political role, but
Hmm.
this is a church oriented podcast.
Yeah.
There is an amazing intersection between what local government and religious organizations can do with
Hmm.
regards to the opioid crisis.
Yeah.
So, like, if you ask me what is like the main thing that we need to focus on, like, okay, you can do a whole bunch of different things, but if it comes down to something that has the most impact and like we can save lives, the opioid crisis can mostly be addressed. Like the most effective strategy, and I'm promise you, I'm a nerd, right? So forgive me for that.
Yeah,
But
you're good.
the there's a program called the Icelandic model of substance abuse prevention, and what it
Okay.
is essentially in Iceland they used to have like some of the worst rates of teen and substance abuse, in Northern Europe, and then after
Wow.
20 years of this program, they have some of the lowest, right? So it like went from
Wow.
like 40%, don't quote me on this, but like
Yeah.
40% down to like 4% in 20 years, which is
Mhm.
phenomenal. And the program is pretty much just everybody turned in on kids and said, "Hey, we are just going to be all about you guys, right? To solve a societal level like substance
Mhm.
abuse prevention or substance abuse issue." They're like, "We're just going to focus on our kids." So
Yeah.
churches already do that to a large degree, and I think that if we can have a conversation across the entire community that involves our churches, involves our other civic organizations, involves the schools, and say, "All right, everybody's on the same page. Like we're just gonna push as many amazing resources and programs as we can at kids, like
That's
to
so good.
guide
Yeah.
them through this part, like where they're most exposed and the most vulnerable. We switch the conversation over from treatment into prevention. And then it's like we get all the added benefits of that. Like, what if it was just an amazing place to raise your kids? Like, that's an
Mhm.
added benefit. But like
Yeah.
the stated goal is like, hey, we're gonna knock this opioid crisis out, right? That's
Yeah.
that's our stated goal. But the added benefit is that like we can actually also just make this a wonderful place to live and raise families. So I think that our churches will have like a large part of that conversation or can contribute in large part to that conversation that we try to have as a community. Be like, okay, how do we start working on this
Yeah.
to make sure that this is an amazing and safe place for our kids to grow up? I'm raising my kids here, you're raising your kids here, so it's like
Mhm.
it's important, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
um, but I think that that's a really interesting place where, you know, church and the state can work hand in hand. It's like we've all got the same goal here,
Yes.
you know. So,
Yeah.
yeah, like I said, I think that that's probably this might be one of the first times that we kind of start, that kind of version of the conversation. But I'm all about having it.
Yeah.
So,
That's so good. And you can, like, our listeners can be praying about like how can we make a difference and volunteer.
yeah,
And but also, as you were saying that, something came to mind in it with like fostering. So
yeah,
Dakota and I had
absolutely.
gotten certified to foster. We felt called to it when I was
Yeah,
working
yeah,
in the
yeah.
public schools, because there's so many kids who need a home, and there's not
Hmm.
enough. They're kept in their homes
Yeah.
where it's not the
Hmm.
safest environment because there's not enough foster homes. So we went through the classes, we did the interview. It's a long process.
Yeah.
It's worth it though. I don't want to deter people because of the process. It's totally worth it. And it makes it easier now. I just talked to somebody the other night who heads it up here in Romney at the
Hmm.
Romney Children's Home. So it's all online, other than so you can do it from your home.
Oh, cool.
Like we'd have to go into classes for a few hours,
Yeah,
like weeks in a row.
yeah.
Um, but I've heard a statistic as well a couple different times. So the amount of children in the United States that are in the foster care system, if one person from every single church
Yes, absolutely.
would
I was
foster,
gonna say this if you didn't. Yeah,
yes,
yeah, yeah,
then there would be no more kids
yeah.
in the system.
And think of like what I, my wife. Maybe she'll see this. Maybe she won't.
Yeah.
we're very much in the same boat. That's where we're trying to orient ourselves.
Okay.
I've got to make sure that we're in a stable place. I'm still in the military, so that's a factor in kind of our win
Yeah.
discussion. But we're absolutely oriented that direction, and we're
Yeah.
all about it too. Because I agree with you. Like there's how could you pray for a better outcome than to make sure that every kid just has a place where they feel loved?
Yeah.
you know, and yeah, and
Yeah.
that's not. I think it's something that we sometimes take for granted when everything's going well in our lives. Is that there's kids that don't have the kind of environment that we we want for them, and
Yeah.
that's something that good on you guys, and that's
Yeah.
wonderful. Yeah.
And so we're just praying. I was talking to Sally Johnson. She came to
Hmm.
volunteer for the maze. So she's the one that heads it up. And she was like, whenever you guys want to. And I told her, I was like, I've been praying, like, whenever it's God's timing, he'll bring the child to us and we'll know.
Yeah.
And and so like I know people when we've shared that we were going through the process
Hmm.
and all, and what stopped. So it was the water at our rental house that
Hmm.
didn't pass. So, but we were praying for God's
Hmm.
timing in it, and then we found out we were pregnant with Madeline. So like, we
Yeah.
we've had a couple kids, but I'm like, we're ready whenever it's God's timing. And people said like, well, what are you going to do when they have to go back to their family, and that might not be the safest. And you know what, like we learn in the classes, and that really changed my heart. That is the goal
Hmm.
when you're fostering, for them to get to go back to their families. And that would be a grieving process for Dakota and I, and for our kids, because you do love them like your own.
Hmm.
But that's where it comes in, like, this is not about me, it's about serving others. And like, God is going to give me the strength and the comfort, like, in letting go. Yes, it will be hard, but if we can, like you said, like, not only with the prevention, but if you can even help out for a short period of time,
Hmm.
maybe it's a
Hmm.
longer one, but if you can help out so that those parents can
Yeah.
get the help and the
Absolutely.
resources that they
Absolutely.
need.
Absolutely. And a lot of them, like, this is a weird way to kind of come into this conversation. So I'm
Hmm.
when you're the new attorney in town, in a small town where we don't have public defenders, what happens is you get what are called court appointments. So it's
Mm.
essentially like, hey, the court will say you're gonna represent this person. So I've had to do criminal defense, and then I've done a couple juvenile cases in which I actually represented the parent. And what I can say is that there is at least a decent chance every time that some of these issues pop up is like the parent is a young person who didn't have somebody to help them along the way
Hmm.
too, right? So it's like I'm very very proud too of one that I got to work with. She just got through reunification, right? So it's like went through the process and
Yeah.
like stepped out, saw the patterns in her life that were leading her in a direction where she didn't want to be. And like the cool part was that the community and the court were able to link up resources and then
Hmm.
help put her on a good trajectory. It's like she's back with her kids. So it's like that
That's
is
awesome.
and it is. And it's like I think that if we can all kind of understand that, it's not all just you, the fuller picture is sometimes hard for us to see, and sometimes it goes back 50 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That person may have been raised in a bad house or a hard house
It's
that
generational
that that
curses. Yeah.
had that had their parents that had a hard
Hmm.
time. You know what I mean? So it's like if we can kind of understand how these issues can be resolved and made better, and then they find a good resolution, it can also be a wonderful thing. And good on you guys also for recognizing that yes, there could be a hardship when you all have to deal with it if you do,
Yeah.
but at the same time that is like that's still a happy story,
Hmm.
that's still a happy outcome, and
Yeah.
one that you know I, is something that we should all work towards too.
Yeah. And we can be praying
Yeah, absolutely.
for the parents, like, of the
Absolutely.
children that are
And we
in our care, because there is power
and
in
we and we
prayer.
can get them into churches. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like that a lot of times too, they don't have a network. They don't have anybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're 22-year-old kids. I mean, not that 22 is a kid, but it's like
Yeah.
22 is a kid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if you haven't had anybody to help you along the way, and you don't have a community, you don't have a church family, it's like, how are we gonna hold it against them for being lost? You know?
Exactly. And
So yeah, I
and
just
I know, just to point people to it, in a couple weeks I'll release the episode with them on it. So the pastor and his wife at Little
mm-hmm.
Cacapon Baptist Church. So they, and like others in their church, have a program for single moms
Oh, cool.
to go through, and like, just they
Yep.
come alongside them and they help them out, and they love on them and they care for them. And that's such a beautiful thing. Like, just last night somebody messaged me, and she had just listened to the podcast
Mm-hmm.
with Dakota's testimony, and she was just saying how much of an impact it left on her. And then
Mm-hmm.
we got to talking, and I was like, do you have a a local church that you're a
Mhm.
part of. And she had shared like how um, she had a baby
Mhm.
at I think 18, and she like quit going to church because she
Mhm.
felt shame. And I can think back, like, before Dakota and I had repented of it, like, we had sex before marriage, and that was always a thought in my mind, like, okay, what
Mhm.
what if I get pregnant? Like, I don't want to be. And that's, of course, we can get in our heads about that, but like
Mhm.
as a church, we need to be loving
Yeah.
on those mamas and daddies that like we all sin. It's gonna look
Yeah.
it's different for all of us, but like every single child is a gift
Yeah.
from God.
And think about what the reward is for the community and for the church community. It's like what if we were able to convince somebody to come over and then live a life, you know what I mean, and then be able to bring their love into the church family. Like it's
Yes.
like there's if that's the default, then yeah, I think that's a good place for us to be as a church community too. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, come on over.
Yes. Yeah. So just, I mean, as an encouragement to you guys, be praying about that, how you can love and serve in that way. And even like come alongside foster families.
Hmm.
There are resources like you can be a part of respite care. So allowing them to have, a, like babysit them, the foster kids, for a day or two,
Hmm.
to help out. And or it might be something where like the child got taken from their home
Hmm.
and they're waiting to find other family, so you
Hmm.
might have the kids for a day or two
Hmm.
in that way too. So there's a lot of different options if you don't feel called directly into that, or just helping out like foster families around the holidays
This
and
is
stuff.
great. This is actually more than I know about any of the process at all. It's like we've had the conversation in our house. We're like, okay, we're thinking this is be the time when I'll be in one place for long enough to where we can start. But
Yes.
I actually haven't talked to anybody that's gone through it here locally, so
Yeah.
it's cool to hear
Well, I
the
can point you to all the
yeah, sounds
resources.
sounds great. No,
Yeah.
sounds great. And then maybe our church will have a couple.
Yes. Well, okay. So, Matt and Cece,
Yeah.
they went through the fostering
Oh,
classes with
yeah,
us. That's
awesome,
how we met them. And
awesome,
then I invited them to church because she
awesome.
was like, I kind of want to get if we
Yeah.
ever foster, which
Yeah.
they adopted 3 boys
Yeah.
at this
Oh,
point.
whoa.
Yes.
Awesome.
So, um, their first little boy, I won't say the names because I don't know who else listening to
Yeah.
this. I don't know if the bio parents, but like their first little boy, they got him a couple days old. And I
Mm.
remember like right after we went through the classes, like they got him almost right away. And then it was later that they got the older two brothers. And they've had one baby girl since then that was reunified. Like it was just a bad situation that
Mm-hmm.
happened. And so she had it, they make them go through parenting classes. Like they don't just give their kids
Mm-hmm.
back. I don't think people realize that. They have to go through classes. They have to, show that
Mm-hmm.
they're going to provide a safe environment
Mm-hmm.
for the child. And then that baby was reunified. And I don't think they're taking any more kids on right now. And they always say, like, we're not going to push you to take kids, because the last thing they want
Mm-hmm.
is for a foster family to have too many kids and
Mm-hmm.
then be like, okay, I'm overwhelmed, I'm going to send this kid back,
Yeah.
because that's another trauma for the kid
Yeah.
to go through. So they are very gracious in that. And I think some people are nervous when they start taking one, they're going to be pushed. But that's not what, especially the system in our county, like, that's not their heart in it. Their heart in it is to have a safe, trusted environment for these kids.
That's fantastic. I can't wait to learn more about it. And
Yeah.
like I said,
And I'll post like I can post in the show notes resource, like
cool.
their email and
Very
stuff
cool.
like that, and
Yeah.
resources for people to look
I think it's
into it
great.
more.
Yeah.
Any other goals that you had?
Not. I mean, not really. As
Okay.
far as from the office, that I want to do one term. I want to work on structural stuff, and then I want to get back to a small town life. My real goal in my career is to end up practicing law a couple hours a day and build furniture.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, so this is not going to be a long term thing, and I'm hoping that we can just orient towards cool community development stuff,
Yeah.
and then step out of it and just enjoy living in our hometown.
Yeah, yeah. And you'll be able to like build others up in this next year, that hopefully one of
I,
them will
I
be able to
I am
step
very
into
much
that.
looking forward to meeting the next generation of leaders that want to step up. And like I said,
Yeah.
I think that that's our end state and our good trajectory, is that we have young people that want to call this place their home and then want to work on the community. And
Mhm.
very very happy to pass the torch. I mean, I'll pass it after I'm done, but at the same
Yeah.
time, I'm looking forward to that, even going into it.
Yeah, that's great. So, how can our community specifically come alongside you in making a difference for others? And, like the Bible says, loving our neighbors well. So, you think about like Jesus summed up all 10 commandments in two: it's love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't necessarily mean like, okay, physically the one that lives next to me, but just
Yeah.
everybody around you.
Yeah.
How can you love them well? So, how can people
I think that
do that?
that is, if you ask, the most important thing that I think should guide any public policy maker is, that should be their guiding. Love your neighbor as yourself. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and remember that we're one community.
Mm-hmm.
We're not every political party for themselves. Our kids go to school together. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's not church versus church. It's not church versus civic organization. It's
Yeah.
not political party. It's we are all here together. And I think that if we can remember that as a default, and then look for those opportunities to work both with in your own organizations, outside of your organizations, but towards these common goals that we have as a community, I think that's the way forward that I would like to see us all kind of orient towards.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know it sounds kind of hippie, but
No, that's good. I think that's a
I
great
mean, that's
goal.
what I'm hoping that we can kind of steer ourselves towards is just a reset on, hey, like we're all one community and we all
Hmm.
we all want the same things, so let's work on it together.
Yep, that's great. So, how can our listeners be praying for you today?
Pray for me, pray for the world. We're I'm For me, pray for guidance.
Hmm.
Pray for, I'm going to ask for wisdom at every juncture to make the best decisions that I can, because the community deserves the best that I can possibly bring to the table. So, I mean, uh, any assistance in that point would be great, but, pray
Hmm.
for the world's wild right now,
Yeah.
so
Hmm.
I think that we should all be praying for a stable and safe place
Yeah.
that we can live in and we can do the local thing in.
Hmm.
I pay attention a lot to international news because I'm still in the military, but
Yeah.
I think that we should all pray for peace. We should all pray for our ability to come together as a community, and then yeah, if anybody wants to pray for me, know that I will take all the prayers for wisdom that I can get, because I sure
Yeah.
need it.
Yeah. And I think in the book of James, it does say, pray for all you have to do is ask for wisdom and God will give it. And anything of Solomon, like he was, I think it was him. So he was like the wisest man ever to live, it says. But when God had said like, okay, what do you want? He specifically said wisdom, and then there were so many other things that came alongside that. But yeah, let me go ahead and pray for you right now. God, we love you, and we just thank you so much for this time and just this platform to be able to point others back to you and point them to ways that they can serve our community. Lord, we want to pray over Logan and just anybody else who's going to be placed into leadership. I just pray that you'll use them in mighty ways. I pray that you'll give them wisdom and guidance and discernment and strength to know specifically what you are calling them to and maybe what you're calling them to step back from. um, I just pray that for our country and our world, I just pray for safety. I pray for peace, and I just pray that as Christians, we will be able to just rise up and and love others well, point them back to you, and just bring hope and be lights in the world. So we pray all these things in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
Man.
Well, I hope that you guys enjoyed that episode with Logan. It made me really excited to hear about the ways that he wants to make a difference in our small community. And I just pray that no matter where you are at in life or where you live, that you will be able to come alongside the leaders, whether that is by prayer or through service as well, and just be praying intentionally for God to give you complete clarity on how you can serve God well and love your neighbor well. So yeah, just go and make a difference. And then if you like this episode, you can share it with a friend. Don't forget to subscribe and comment and like the podcast for others to be able to find it as well. So enjoy your week, and we will see you back here next Thursday. See you guys.